Why does the human keep rejecting me? The alien princess finally demanded an answer. The morning sun bathed the vast city of Zithuria in shades of gold and amber. Towers of gleaming metal stretched into the sky, their surfaces reflecting the colors of the alien world like living mirrors. The streets below were alive with movement, alien merchants shouting their wares, floating vehicles gliding past in silent harmony, and couriers darting between the crowded markets. It was a city of grandeur, of power, of history, and yet, for all its splendor, the life of one young human man seemed strangely ordinary against its scale. Captain Elias Trent walked through the wide streets with careful steps, his posture straight and calm. Despite being surrounded by creatures from countless worlds, he moved with the ease of someone used to the unfamiliar. His eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing. The slight tension in the shoulders of a Zithurian trader, the way a hovercart leaned too heavily to one side, or the coded gestures of two alien diplomats speaking in whispers near the steps of a palace outpost. Elias had been trained to notice these details. It was part of his duty as a human envoy, a mediator tasked with preventing misunderstandings that could spark wars. Humans were rare in the Zithurian capital, and even rarer still were humans who commanded respect simply by existing. Elias did not rely on his rank or uniform to be seen. He relied on the quiet confidence that came from competence, from integrity, from knowing that one action could save lives or end them. And yet, he was aware that someone was watching him even now. From the upper balconies of the grand palace, Princess Lyra observed him. She had grown up in the lap of luxury, surrounded by advisors, bodyguards, and endless attention from beings across the galaxy who sought her favor. Most would have crumbled under her gaze or smiled and bowed endlessly, but not Elias. He did not bow as deeply as protocol required. He did not avert his eyes when she entered a room. He simply acknowledged her presence with calm politeness, treating her neither as a goddess nor a threat. Lyra frowned slightly, her violet eyes narrowing. It was a rare feeling for her, frustration. She was used to command, used to control. Anyone who wished to impress her, anyone who wanted to gain her trust, usually bent immediately. Yet this human resisted in a way she did not expect. He was courteous, yet distant, respectful, yet unyielding. It was maddening, and strangely, it made her heart beat faster whenever he entered her line of sight. She had first noticed him months ago, when he arrived with the human envoy fleet to negotiate a trade agreement. His calm confidence had set him apart instantly. While her other advisors quarreled, schemed, or bowed under pressure, Elias had addressed the Zithurian council with direct, clear reasoning. He had persuaded them without raising his voice, without flashy displays, without bending rules to gain favor. He had relied only on logic, fairness, and integrity. Since then, Lyra found herself curious about him. She watched him discreetly as he walked through the palace halls, noting the way he spoke to servants, how he treated junior officers, how he intervened when a misunderstanding between alien factions threatened to escalate. Every small act of kindness, every careful decision drew her attention, and yet, despite her efforts to approach him, he remained distant. This morning, she decided she would observe him directly. She stepped onto the balcony overlooking the main courtyard, where Elias was walking alongside a group of Zithurian engineers. She watched as he knelt to inspect a broken drone, speaking quietly with the engineers in a language that was part human, part universal translator. He listened patiently, nodded thoughtfully, and offered suggestions that were immediately implemented. The engineers, normally brash and proud, obeyed without hesitation. Lyra tilted her head, curiosity mingling with irritation. Why did this human remain so unmoved by her attention? She had sent her attendants with messages, gifts, invitations, even subtle gestures meant to intrigue him. Every human she had encountered before would have been flustered, eager, desperate to please. Elias had not reacted. Not once. Her frustration grew. She could not understand it, and that only made her more interested. She wanted an answer. She wanted to know what it was about him that allowed him to remain indifferent to her influence. And more importantly, she wanted to know why it mattered so much to her that he did. Elias, for his part, remained unaware of the princess's gaze. His focus was on the engineers and the drone before them. He pointed out a malfunction in the energy conduit and suggested a way to stabilize the power core temporarily. The engineers nodded, impressed, and worked quickly under his guidance. To anyone else, this might have been just a routine task, but Elias treated it with care because he understood the implications. A minor malfunction could escalate into a catastrophic failure if left unchecked. He did not act for recognition or reward. He acted because it was the right thing to do. Lyra's patience finally broke. She descended the steps from her balcony and approached the courtyard, making no effort to hide her presence. Elias noticed her immediately, but he did not flinch or bow excessively. He simply straightened his posture and inclined his head slightly, as though acknowledging a colleague rather than a princess. "Captain Trent," Lyra said, her voice clear and firm, carrying over the murmurs of the courtyard. "I have been wondering something for months. Why do you ignore my attention? Why do you resist me?" Elias looked at her calmly. There was no hesitation, no surprise. "Princess Lyra," he said evenly, "I do not resist you personally. I am here to perform a duty. My focus must remain on my responsibilities, not on my own desires or distractions." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. This was not the reaction she expected. Most would have stammered, attempted charm, or shown some sign of flustered confusion. Not him. He spoke plainly, honestly, with a conviction that she had rarely seen. "I am not a distraction," she said, a touch of frustration in her tone. "I am your guest and your ally." "Surely there is room for attention to those who matter." Elias shook his head gently. "It is not a matter of worth or importance. It is a matter of duty and principle. Humans value action, integrity, and loyalty. I cannot compromise those values for personal gain, even if it means entertaining feelings or responding to attention." Lyra's frown deepened, but beneath it, a spark of admiration flickered. He was unlike any being she had encountered. He was strong in a way that was not physical alone, but moral, unwavering, and rare. Her curiosity deepened, mingling with something she had never expected: respect. Over the next few days, Lyra watched Elias even more closely. She followed him on official missions, often from a distance, observing the way he mediated disputes between alien factions, how he treated injured civilians, and how he solved crises with calm precision. Each day, she noticed something new. A subtle gesture that comforted a frightened child, a decision that prioritized lives over politics, a willingness to take risks for the safety of others. It was unlike anything she had seen in her palace before. Here was a being who could face threats and challenges with courage, yet never let pride, ambition, or desire cloud his judgment. Lyra began to understand, at least in part, why she felt drawn to him. It was not vanity or beauty, not wealth or power. It was character. Still, she felt frustrated. Why did he not see her? Why did he not respond to her efforts? The question gnawed at her constantly. She began to question herself as well. Was she missing something fundamental about humans? Was there a way to reach him that she had not yet discovered? One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, painting the city in fiery oranges and deep purples, Lyra found herself walking the palace gardens, her mind restless. She thought about the first time she had truly noticed Elias, about the way he had solved a minor conflict between alien merchants without raising his voice, about the quiet patience he displayed in every interaction. She remembered the first time he had prevented a disaster during a diplomatic meeting. A sudden power surge threatened to destroy delicate equipment, and without hesitation, he had acted, calmly instructing both humans and Zethurians to safety. The crisis passed without injury, and yet no one had given him praise. He did not seek it. He had done what needed to be done, simply because it was right. Lyra realized she was not simply frustrated, she was fascinated. And fascination, she knew, was the beginning of something far more powerful than desire. It was the beginning of respect, admiration, and understanding. But she also knew that she could not approach him as she would anyone else. To do so would risk destroying the fragile balance of trust and dignity that already existed between them. That night, she resolved to observe him more, to learn more, and to understand more. She did not yet know how, or when she would finally ask the question that burned in her mind. Why did he resist her? And when she did, she suspected the answer would reveal truths far greater than she had ever imagined, about humans, about herself, and about the way courage and integrity could shine even in the midst of galactic splendor. Elias Trent, unaware of the thoughts that haunted the princess, prepared for the next day's duties. He checked reports from multiple planets, coordinated with allies, and ensured that every detail was accounted for. To him, it was simply another day of duty, another day to act with purpose and honor. He did not yet know that his every action had captured the attention of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, nor that the question she had long withheld would soon demand an answer. And so, in the glowing city of Zithuria, two lives, one of duty, one of curiosity, continued on paths destined to cross in ways neither could yet imagine. Lyra's fascination would grow into determination, and Elia's unwavering principles would test the limits of understanding, patience, and ultimately, respect. In a world of power and tradition, it was the quiet strength of a human that began to shift the tides, unseen, unheralded, and unforgettable. By the time the stars filled the sky, Lyra realized one simple truth: this human was different. And for the first time, she did not seek to control him. She sought to understand him. The sun rose over Zithuria, casting long shadows across the palace terraces. The city was alive with activity once more. Traders moved quickly through the markets, diplomats hurried along the marble corridors, and the floating skycraft hummed softly as they passed over the towers. Amid the constant motion, Princess Lyra moved with purpose. Her mind was fixed on one thing: Captain Elias Trent. She had watched him for weeks now, observing his calm demeanor, his precise decisions, and his unwavering attention to duty. She admired him in ways she had never felt before. Unlike the other humans and alien officials she had encountered, he did not seem impressed by her status or wealth. He treated her neither as a princess to be courted nor as a threat to be feared. He treated her with respect, but with boundaries she could not penetrate. That morning she decided she would confront him. She could no longer bear the uncertainty. She needed answers. Why did he resist her? Why did he maintain this distance when she had made her interests so clear? Was it arrogance, defiance, or something else entirely? She found him in the palace courtyard, consulting with engineers and security officers. The morning light glinted off the metal surfaces of drones and hover vehicles, and Elia's calm presence seemed to command the space without effort. Lyra approached, her footsteps measured, her voice steady. "Captain Trent," she said, drawing his attention. His eyes met hers, calm and unflinching, and he inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. "Princess Lyra," he replied. His voice was polite, measured, carrying no fear or flattery. "Good morning." She took a step closer. "I need to understand something. Why do you ignore my attention? Why do you keep your distance?" Elia's expression remained unchanged. "It is not personal," he said quietly. "My attention is devoted to duty. I cannot allow my personal feelings or distractions to interfere with responsibility." Lyra frowned. This was not the answer she wanted, yet it intrigued her even more. "Not personal," she repeated. "You do not resist me because of who I am." He shook his head. No, I respect you, princess, but my choices are guided by principle, not desire. Humans value action and integrity above all else. To compromise these values for personal reasons would be irresponsible. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. Principle, duty. That is a convenient excuse. I am not asking you to abandon your duty. I am asking why you resist me. Elias paused, considering his words carefully, because it is not right to let feelings cloud judgment. I cannot allow myself to respond to attention if it conflicts with responsibility. It is not about resistance. It is about maintaining clarity and fairness in all decisions I make. The princess felt a surge of frustration. Most beings she had encountered would have been flustered by her directness, would have tried to charm her or at least deflected the question. But Elias did not. He spoke calmly, honestly, without hesitation. It was maddening, and yet she could not help but respect him for it. She decided to test him further. So you would refuse anyone regardless of their position or importance? Yes, he said simply. A human's value lies in actions and integrity, not titles or appearances. I do not make exceptions. Lyra's frown deepened. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Even her advisors, who were trained in diplomacy and etiquette, rarely dared to speak with such honesty. Most would have feared her reaction, bending to please or placate her. Elias did not fear her. He simply spoke the truth. The courtyard was quiet for a moment, the hum of distant machinery the only sound. Lyra studied him closely. There was a strength in him that went beyond the physical. He had courage, yes, but more than that, he had a moral strength that shone in every action. It was rare, perhaps unique in the galaxy, and it frustrated her further because she did not know how to reach him. Over the next few days, Lyra observed him with increasing intensity. She followed him on missions around the palace, noting how he mediated disputes between alien factions, how he treated injured civilians, and how he solved problems with calm precision. Each observation revealed more about the man she had been trying to understand. During one mission, a transport vessel carrying rare supplies for the palace encountered mechanical failure over the city. Panic spread quickly among the workers, but Elias remained calm. He directed the engineers, reassured the frightened crew, and coordinated with palace security to prevent damage to nearby buildings. By the time the situation was resolved, the vessel was secured, and no one was hurt. Not a word of thanks was offered to him by the workers, yet he did not seem to notice. He did what was necessary because it was right. Lyra watched from a balcony above, hidden behind the marble pillars. She felt a strange combination of admiration and envy. His calm, unshakable focus was unlike anything she had experienced. It was not influenced by fear, status, or desire. It came from within. Later, as she walked through the palace gardens, she reflected on what she had seen. The gardens were vast and meticulously maintained, filled with exotic plants from countless planets. The air was fragrant with the scent of flowering vines, and the soft trickle of fountains added a calming rhythm to the morning. Yet Lyra's thoughts were restless. She considered her own life, surrounded by wealth, power, and endless attention. She had always been admired, desired, and obeyed, but none of it had prepared her for someone like Elias. He did not bend to her influence. He did not act out of fear or flattery. And for the first time, she wondered if she had ever truly understood what strength meant. The next challenge came unexpectedly. A neighboring empire had begun testing the borders of Zethurian space, sending reconnaissance ships and probing defenses. Rumors spread quickly through the palace, and the council grew tense. The empire had a reputation for ruthless tactics and cunning strategy, and any misstep could lead to war. Lyra observed Elias closely as he reviewed reports from the human envoy office. He analyzed the information with methodical precision, noting potential weaknesses and threats, and advising the council on defensive measures. Unlike the Zethurian generals, who often let pride and tradition influence their decisions, Elias relied on facts, logic, and foresight. During a council meeting, an argument erupted between two advisors. One insisted on immediate retaliation, while the other cautioned against provoking the rival empire. Voices rose, tempers flared, and the meeting threatened to descend into chaos. Elias spoke up calmly, outlining a plan that balanced defense with diplomacy, protecting Zithuria without inviting unnecessary conflict. His words carried weight, not because of his rank, but because they were reasonable, fair, and actionable. Lyra watched from her seat, fascinated. She had expected humans to be weak, easily intimidated, or driven by self-interest. Elias had proven all of those assumptions wrong. She felt a pang of realization. Humans could be strong in ways that aliens could not even understand. They were guided not by status or authority, but by choice, principle, and courage. Later that evening, Lyra decided to speak with him again. She found him walking alone through the palace corridors, reviewing data on a tablet. He looked up as she approached, calm and composed. "Captain Trent," she said, her voice steady but curious, "do you ever question your choices? Do you ever wonder if your principles are enough to guide you?" Elias regarded her silently for a moment. "Every day," he admitted. But questioning does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means learning, observing, and ensuring that actions are guided by integrity. Lyra smiled faintly. She had expected arrogance or defiance, but he spoke with humility and clarity. "And what if your duty conflicts with someone's feelings? With mine?" He looked at her directly, his eyes steady. "Then duty must come first. Feelings are important, but they cannot compromise justice, fairness, or the protection of life." She felt a strange mix of frustration and respect. He was not cold or unfeeling. He simply measured his actions against a higher standard, one that she had never fully appreciated before. She began to understand that his rejections were not personal. They were a reflection of human strength, discipline, and moral courage. The days passed, and tensions in the city grew. The neighboring empire's presence became more pronounced, and rumors of sabotage and espionage began to circulate. Lyra noticed Elias working tirelessly to uncover threats, coordinate defenses, and maintain peace within the palace. He never complained, never sought recognition, never allowed his personal desires to interfere with his mission. One evening, a minor crisis occurred. A group of saboteurs attempted to disable the palace's power grid, hoping to create chaos. Security officers were caught off guard, and panic spread quickly. Elias reacted immediately, directing teams to contain the damage, evacuate vulnerable personnel, and neutralize the threat. By the time the saboteurs were captured, the palace was unharmed. Lyra observed the entire event from a balcony. She realized that his actions, calm and precise, had saved countless lives. She had seen bravery before, but never such disciplined, deliberate courage. It was not reckless heroism. It was strength measured against responsibility. That night, as the city lights reflected in her eyes, Lyra thought about him differently. She was no longer frustrated with his distance. She was inspired. She began to see that humans, unlike many alien species, could combine intelligence, courage, and morality in ways that created true power, and she wanted to understand it. Elias, unaware of the growing fascination he had inspired, continued his duties with quiet resolve. To him, it was simply another day of work, another challenge to face. He did not seek recognition, nor did he act to impress anyone. He acted because it was right. And in doing so, he was teaching the princess a lesson she had not expected, that true strength was not measured by wealth, titles, or appearances, but by character, courage, and principle. Lyra's curiosity had turned into determination. She would find the answer she sought. She would understand why he resisted, why he acted as he did, and perhaps in the process she would learn something profound about humans and about herself. As the night settled over Zithuria, two lives moved forward, bound by curiosity, respect, and the unspoken understanding that something extraordinary was unfolding. Lyra's determination and Elia's unwavering principles set the stage for challenges, revelations, and a growing bond that neither of them could yet predict. In a galaxy of power, politics, and tradition, it was a human's quiet strength that began to shift the tides, unseen but undeniable and unforgettable in its impact. The city of Zithuria had never felt so tense. The early morning light barely pierced the thick haze of worry that settled over the palace. Rumors of a hostile neighboring empire's movements had spread like wildfire, and advisors whispered endlessly about sabotage, espionage, and potential attacks. Every corridor, every balcony, every chamber seemed alive with anxiety. Yet amid the tension, Captain Elias Trent moved with the calm certainty of someone who understood the stakes without being consumed by fear. Princess Lyra, on the other hand, felt a growing storm within her. She had spent weeks observing Elias, following his actions, and trying to understand the strength that humans seem to possess in quiet abundance. Now, as the threat loomed closer, she realized just how critical his presence had become. He was more than a mediator, more than an advisor. He was a shield, a force capable of preventing chaos from consuming her city. Early that morning, the palace alarm had sounded. A small shuttle attempting to dock in the city's outer sector had exploded midair, scattering debris over a busy market district. Panic erupted instantly. Civilians screamed, merchants shouted, and palace guards scrambled in disorganized chaos. Lyra watched from a balcony, her heart pounding. She wanted to act, to command, to show her authority, but she knew instinctively that authority alone would not save lives. Elias was already moving through the courtyard, his eyes scanning the scene with precision. He barked clear instructions to the palace security officers, directing them to clear the streets, secure the market, and protect civilians from falling debris. His voice was calm, authoritative, yet devoid of fear or anger. Lyra found herself stepping closer to the edge of the balcony, unable to tear her eyes away from the human who seemed to operate with such clarity amid chaos. A merchant stumbled, trapped under a fallen stall. Without hesitation, Elias knelt, lifting the debris with careful, controlled strength while instructing guards to assist. The merchant, terrified, tried to apologize repeatedly, but Elias only nodded and continued, ensuring the man's safety before moving on. Lyra's chest tightened as she realized that this was not bravado or showmanship. This was instinctive action, grounded in skill, courage, and concern for others. By midday, reports of minor attacks, sabotage attempts, and unexplained power failures began arriving from other parts of the city. The palace council convened urgently, their usual disagreements amplified by fear. Some demanded immediate offensive action against the neighboring empire, while others argued for defensive measures and diplomacy. The room was filled with shouting, pointing fingers, and accusations. Lyra felt overwhelmed. She had never seen such chaos within her own council. Then Elias spoke. His voice, calm but firm, cut through the cacophony. He laid out the facts, reports from reliable sources, potential vulnerabilities, and the likely intentions of the neighboring empire. He outlined a strategy that balanced defense with diplomacy, one that would protect civilians, secure key infrastructure, and prevent unnecessary provocation. His words were clear, concise, and undeniable. Slowly, the room began to quiet, advisors nodding reluctantly as they realized the wisdom in his plan. Lyra felt a surge of admiration. Here was a human who could command respect not through rank or status, but through intelligence, clarity, and moral authority. She began to understand why she had been drawn to him. He was not only strong, he was principled, disciplined, and unwavering. And yet, he did not seek attention, nor did he attempt to impress her. His focus was entirely on what needed to be done. The crisis escalated further that afternoon. A covert team of saboteurs infiltrated the palace's power grid, attempting to disable critical systems. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the palace seemed to shake with sudden tension. Guards rushed to contain the threat, but the saboteurs were trained, efficient, and dangerous. Lyra felt her stomach tighten as she realized the magnitude of the danger. Elias moved with quiet determination, coordinating teams, predicting the saboteurs' movements, and directing security with pinpoint accuracy. Lyra followed him, trying to keep pace, but he moved with an ease she could not match. She wanted to intervene, to act, but every time she tried, he gently redirected her to a safe position, his calm voice reassuring but firm. One of the saboteurs attempted to disable a secondary power conduit, which could have caused a cascade failure in the palace's energy systems. Without hesitation, Elias lunged forward, dismantling the device and neutralizing the threat. Lyra watched, her heart pounding, as he risked himself to protect not just the palace, but the lives of everyone within it. She realized in that moment that this human's courage was not reckless. It was calculated, disciplined, and guided by an unshakable moral compass. By evening, the immediate threat had been neutralized, though tension remained high. The council met again, exhausted but alive, their earlier quarrels replaced by cautious respect for Elias' leadership. Lyra sat quietly, observing him as he continued to coordinate defenses, review reports, and communicate with human and Zethurian allies. His focus never wavered. His commitment to duty never faltered. For Lyra, it was both humbling and enlightening. She had always believed that strength came from status, wealth, and power. Yet here was a human who embodied a different kind of strength, one rooted in integrity, courage, and selflessness. She felt a strange mix of frustration, admiration, and something deeper, a curiosity that had grown into determination. That night, the city quieted under the soft glow of twin moons. Lyra found herself walking the palace gardens, reflecting on the events of the day. The fountains glistened in the moonlight, and the exotic plants swayed gently in the night breeze. Yet her thoughts were far from peaceful. She thought of Elias, of the calm authority he had displayed, of the courage he had shown in the face of danger, and of the moral clarity that guided his every action. She realized that she had been asking the wrong question for weeks. It was not why he rejected her attention. The real question was why she had been so captivated by him. It was his strength, his integrity, and his unwavering dedication to what was right that drew her in, not his appearance, status, or charm. He represented something she had rarely seen in her own world: pure, unyielding human courage. The following day brought another challenge. Intelligence reports indicated that the neighboring empire was preparing a coordinated attack on the outer districts of Zithuria. The threat was imminent, and there was little time to prepare. Lyra accompanied Elias to the command center, where he immediately began assessing the situation. He reviewed holographic maps, analyzing troop movements, supply lines, and potential points of vulnerability. He spoke calmly and clearly to the Zethurian commanders, offering strategies to fortify defenses, protect civilians, and anticipate enemy actions. Lyra watched as the humans' plan unfolded with precision, each decision calculated, each instruction delivered with clarity. As the city prepared for potential conflict, Elias also considered the human approach to leadership. He prioritized the safety of all lives, not just those of the elite or powerful. He ensured that evacuation plans were in place, that medical teams were ready, and that communication lines remained open. Lyra observed the respect he commanded, not through fear or status, but through competence and moral authority. By midday, skirmishes had begun on the outskirts of the city. Small teams of enemy forces attempted to breach the outer perimeter, but they were met with coordinated defense guided by Elias' strategies. He moved among the soldiers and engineers, offering instructions, reassurance, and guidance. He did not command with arrogance, he led with clarity and purpose. Lyra followed him, her frustration mingling with awe. She had expected humans to be weak, easily intimidated, or self-serving. Yet Elias demonstrated a strength that surpassed most alien warriors she had seen. It was not physical alone, but moral, strategic, and disciplined. Every action he took reflected careful thought, courage, and an unwavering sense of responsibility. By evening, the outer attacks had been repelled, though the threat of further conflict remained. Lyra sat in her chambers, reflecting on the events of the day. She realized that Elia's rejections were not acts of disdain or disinterest. They were expressions of human strength, discipline, and principle. He did not respond to attention or desire because his focus was on what truly mattered: duty, integrity, and the protection of life. For the first time, Lyra understood the depth of human courage. It was not flashy or loud. It did not seek recognition. It was steady, unwavering, and guided by a moral compass that could not be swayed by fear, power, or temptation. She felt a growing respect for Elias, a fascination that had evolved into determination. The night was quiet, but Lyra could not sleep. She thought of the coming days, of the challenges that still lay ahead, and of the lessons she was learning from the human before her. She realized that her question, why he resisted her, was not the question she needed to answer. The question was what she could learn from him, and how she could apply that understanding to her own life, her own leadership, and the people she was sworn to protect. Elias, unaware of the growing admiration he had inspired, continued his duties with quiet resolve. He did not seek recognition, nor did he act for praise. He acted because it was right. And in doing so, he was teaching the princess a lesson she had not expected: that true strength, courage, and leadership could exist without arrogance, fear, or desire. As the twin moons rose high above the palace towers, Lyra made a silent vow. She would understand him, learn from him, and one day, perhaps, earn his respect, not through status, wealth, or power, but through courage, integrity, and action. And in that understanding, she would discover what it truly meant to be strong. The morning air in Xithuria was thick with tension. Smoke from distant skirmishes still lingered in the outer districts, and emergency sirens echoed faintly through the city streets. The palace had been fortified after the repeated sabotage attempts, and every hallway, corridor, and balcony was alive with activity. Princess Lyra moved through the halls with purpose, her violet eyes sharp, her mind racing. The past few days had changed everything. She had witnessed Captain Elias Trent not just survive chaos but control it, protect lives, and inspire loyalty through his calm authority. Yet she could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her more than ever. Her council, once so confident in their wisdom, had begun to rely heavily on Elias' judgments. Lyra realized that she had underestimated both the human and the enemy. She could no longer rely on status or authority alone. She needed insight, strategy, and courage. And she needed Elias. She found him in the palace command center, a large room filled with holographic displays, communication devices, and projections of the surrounding city. Humans and Xithurians alike moved efficiently under his guidance, each person performing their role with precision. Elias studied a map of the outer districts, noting points of vulnerability, troop movements, and civilian zones. His mind worked like a finely tuned machine, processing hundreds of variables in real time. "Captain Trent," Lyra called, stepping into the room. Her voice was calm but carried an edge of urgency. "I need your assessment. The outer districts are still unstable and reports of small attacks are increasing. What should we do next?" Elias looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. "Princess, the situation is critical but manageable. We must prioritize civilian safety first, then fortify key positions in the districts. Small, coordinated teams will respond to skirmishes, while the main forces hold strategic points. The attackers are testing our defenses, but they lack coordination. If we act decisively, we can neutralize threats before they escalate. Lyra nodded, impressed by his clarity and focus. And what about the council? Some of them are pushing for full retaliation. Others want to negotiate. How do we balance this? He gestured to the holographic map, pointing at several key locations. Balance is necessary, but hesitation is dangerous. If we act solely based on fear or pride, we risk civilian lives. We must be calculated, disciplined, and always act with integrity. The council can be advised, but ultimately action must reflect principle, not emotion. Lyra felt a shiver of admiration. She had seen many leaders in her life, both humans and aliens, who relied on power, intimidation, or cunning. Elias relied on none of these. His strength came from clarity, courage, and an unwavering moral compass. It was a rare quality, and it made him dangerous in the best possible way to those who sought to destabilize the city. By midday, the first major attack began. A squadron of enemy drones approached the city from the east, attempting to breach outer defenses and create panic. Guards and engineers scrambled to respond, but the situation threatened to spiral out of control. Lyra felt her stomach tighten as she watched the approaching threat, but Elias remained calm. He moved among the defenders, issuing precise instructions. Divide into sectors, protect civilian zones, neutralize drones without risking unnecessary exposure. Maintain communication at all times. His voice carried authority, but it was not fearsome. It was guiding, reassuring, and clear. Lyra followed him closely, noticing the way he engaged with each team. He did not command from a distance. He assessed, advised, and acted. When a malfunctioning shield generator threatened to expose civilians to incoming fire, Elias rushed forward with engineers, stabilizing the device while under minor fire from enemy drones. He did not panic, he did not falter, and he did not complain. Every action was purposeful, measured, and effective. The city's defenses began to hold. The drones were neutralized, civilian zones remained safe, and chaos was minimized. Lyra felt a surge of relief, but it was accompanied by a growing respect for the human who had orchestrated it all. She realized that bravery alone was not enough. It was skill, strategy, and unwavering commitment that saved lives, and Elias possessed all of them. Even as the attack subsided, another crisis emerged. Intelligence reports indicated a second enemy force attempting to infiltrate the city's water supply. The palace engineers confirmed that contamination could cause widespread illness if not addressed immediately. Lyra felt her chest tighten again. This threat required precision, speed, and expertise. Elias immediately organized a response. He divided the engineers into specialized teams, assigning each to a specific task: water filtration, security monitoring, and contamination neutralization. He moved from group to group, assessing progress, offering guidance, and ensuring efficiency. His presence inspired confidence. Workers who might have panicked or hesitated now operated with clarity, following his direction without question. Lyra observed him from a distance, her mind racing. She had believed she understood what strength was. She had assumed that courage came from boldness, fearlessness, or power, but Elias was teaching her otherwise. Strength could also be calm, disciplined, and moral. It could be measured, precise, and yet profoundly effective. By evening, both crises were under control. The city remained intact and civilians were safe. The council, exhausted and humbled, had begun to recognize Elias' leadership. Lyra sat quietly in the command center, reflecting on the day's events. She realized that she had underestimated the human she had observed for so long. His actions had not only saved lives, but had transformed the palace's approach to crisis management. She felt a mix of awe and curiosity. He had refused her attention, resisted her influence, and yet demonstrated a power far greater than any display of wealth or status could achieve. His integrity, courage, and moral clarity were unmatched, and she found herself both frustrated and fascinated. That night, as the palace settled under the soft glow of twin moons, Lyra approached him in the garden courtyard. The air was cool and filled with the scent of alien flowers. Soft fountains provided a calming rhythm, but her thoughts were restless. "Captain Trent," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "I need to understand something. You risk your life, guide the city, and protect everyone without hesitation. And yet you refuse me. Why?" Elias looked at her, calm as ever. "Princess Lyra," he said, his tone measured, "my actions are guided by duty, principle, and integrity. I do not reject you personally. I simply cannot allow feelings or attention to influence my responsibilities. My loyalty must always lie with what is right, not with desire or recognition." Lyra frowned, frustration and admiration mingling in her expression. "So your refusal is not personal?" "No," he said. "It is a reflection of human strength. We act because it is right, not because of who watches or desires us. Strength comes from integrity, courage, and clarity of purpose." Lyra took a deep breath, absorbing his words. For the first time, she realized that she had been asking the wrong question all along. She had believed his resistance was a barrier, a personal rejection. But it was not. It was a lesson. Elias was showing her the meaning of true strength, the value of principle over power, and the impact of courage guided by integrity. Over the following days, Lyra began to apply these lessons. She worked alongside Elias, learning to observe, listen, and act with clarity. She realized that her position as a princess was only as powerful as her decisions, her understanding, and her moral compass. Authority alone was not enough. Leadership required insight, courage, and a willingness to act for the greater good. Together, they coordinated further defenses, repaired sabotage damage, and strengthened the city's security systems. They worked tirelessly, often into the night, communicating clearly and efficiently with council members, engineers, and security teams. Lyra marveled at Elias' focus, his calm in the face of danger, and his ability to inspire others without commanding obedience through fear. By the end of the week, Zithuria had stabilized. The neighboring empire had retreated temporarily, deterred by the city's resilience and coordinated defense. Civilians celebrated cautiously, grateful for safety, yet unaware of the depth of the crises they had survived. Lyra, however, understood. She had witnessed the courage, intelligence, and moral strength of a human who refused to bend to fear, status, or desire. As she stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the twin moons rise over the towers, she felt a shift within herself. Frustration had given way to respect, curiosity to understanding. She no longer sought to break through Elias' distance. Instead, she sought to learn from him, to understand the principles that guided his actions, and to apply those lessons to her own life and leadership. Elias, unaware of the transformation he had inspired, continued his duties with quiet resolve. To him, the day's work was simply what needed to be done. He acted not for recognition, not for reward, and not for approval. He acted because it was right. And in doing so, he had begun to change the way an entire princess, and perhaps even an empire, understood true strength. Lyra realized that humans were not weak or fragile as many aliens believed. Their power was subtle but profound, rooted in courage, integrity, and the ability to act decisively when others faltered. She had seen it firsthand in Elias Trent, and she knew that the lessons he had taught her would shape her forever. As the night deepened, she made a silent promise. She would continue to learn, to observe, and to grow. And one day, when the time was right, she would fully understand the human before her, not as a suitor or a curiosity, but as a model of strength, courage, and unwavering principle. In the quiet palace gardens under the watchful moons, two lives moved forward together, one guided by duty, the other by the pursuit of understanding. And in their path lay not only the future of Zithuria, but the beginning of a bond forged through respect, courage, and the undeniable power of human integrity. The city of Zithuria was tense, yet resolute. Word of the neighboring empire's impending assault had spread across the palace and city streets. Citizens, soldiers, and council members alike waited anxiously, unsure if their defenses would be enough. Princess Lyra, standing on the palace balcony, watched the horizon where the first glimmers of enemy fleets began to appear. Her mind was a mix of determination and apprehension. The past days had revealed much about the human standing beside her, Captain Elias Trent. She had witnessed his courage, his clarity, and his unwavering sense of duty. Now she would see if his strategies could withstand a full-scale assault. Elias stood near her, calm and focused as always. His eyes scanned the distant approaching ships, analyzing their formation, speed, and potential weaknesses. Lyra felt a surge of admiration and understanding. The human did not panic. He did not falter. Every thought, every action was deliberate and guided by principle. He had become the axis around which the city's defense now turned. "Princess Lyra," Elias said, his voice steady, "the fleet approaching is larger than we expected, but they are predictable in strategy. If we focus on defensive chokepoints and coordinate civilian safety measures, we can withstand the initial assault. Once we stabilize, countermeasures can be employed to force them into retreat." Lyra nodded, absorbing every word. She had spent weeks learning from him, observing his decisions, and understanding the human approach to challenges. His clarity of thought and courage in the face of danger had reshaped her perspective on leadership, strength, and duty. She realized that she had not come to him merely as a princess seeking guidance. She had come as a student of human integrity and principle. The first wave of enemy ships entered Zithuria's outer atmosphere. Defense turrets and shield barriers activated, creating a network of protection that glimmered across the city. Soldiers manned their stations with increased confidence, inspired by Elias' presence and clear instructions. Lyra moved among them, offering reassurance where needed, but she found herself relying more on his guidance than her own authority. It was a lesson in humility she had never expected to learn. The attack began with a barrage of missiles targeting the outer city districts. Civilians were evacuated swiftly, shielded by reinforced barriers. The initial explosions rocked the city, but casualties were minimal due to Elia's preemptive planning. He directed repair teams, coordinated shield adjustments, and issued precise orders to defensive crews. Every move was deliberate, every instruction clear. Chaos was being controlled not by fear, but by skill, strategy, and moral responsibility. Lyra watched as he moved among the crews, ensuring they were protected and confident. His presence was calming, almost magnetic, yet there was no desire for recognition. It was entirely about protecting lives and securing the city. She felt a mixture of awe and realization. Humans, she now understood, were capable of strength beyond brute force or authority. Their power lay in courage, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to what was right. The enemy fleet adjusted their formation, sending specialized attack drones to infiltrate the city's defensive network. Elias quickly assessed the situation, instructing targeted intercepts while reinforcing vulnerable zones. He moved with the efficiency of someone who had anticipated such threats and prepared for them. Lyra followed closely, observing his tactical genius in real time. Amid the chaos, a small group of saboteurs attempted to breach a critical energy hub that powered the city's shields. Guards tried to intercept them, but they were skilled and aggressive. Elias reacted instantly. He coordinated a rapid response, directing security teams and personally disarming the saboteurs with precision. Civilians nearby were evacuated safely under his guidance. Lyra watched him in silence, realizing that his courage was not reckless. It was controlled, disciplined, and always paired with concern for others. As the battle continued, the enemy fleet launched a concentrated attack on the city's central districts. Panic threatened to spread, but Elia's calm presence quelled fear. He deployed secondary defenses, managed evacuation routes, and maintained communication with every unit in the city. His mind worked tirelessly, anticipating enemy moves, adjusting strategies, and protecting lives. Lyra observed him, struck by the realization that humans, when guided by principle and courage, could perform feats that rivaled the greatest alien warriors she had ever known. By midday, the battle reached a critical point. Enemy forces breached the outer defenses in one district, threatening civilian zones. Lyra felt her chest tighten with worry. Soldiers were being pushed back, and shields were at risk of failure. Elias did not hesitate. He moved to the front lines, assessing the situation and directing troops with precise authority. "Hold the line here," he instructed. "Divert reinforcements to the east flank. Protect civilians at all costs. Maintain communication and stay calm. Retreat is not an option unless it ensures safety." Under his guidance, the defenders regained control. Strategic use of shields, targeted counterattacks, and precise coordination forced the enemy to retreat from critical zones. Civilians remained unharmed, and morale among the defenders surged. Lyra felt a wave of relief and pride. This human, whom she had once misunderstood as distant or unyielding, had demonstrated the true measure of strength, courage, intelligence, and unwavering principle. As the afternoon wore on, the enemy fleet began to falter. Their repeated attempts to breach defenses were thwarted by coordinated strategies, disciplined troops, and careful planning. Elias continued to manage every aspect of the defense, never seeking praise, never hesitating, never losing focus. Lyra realized that his power was quiet, subtle, and profound. It was a force that did not rely on fear, status, or appearances. It relied on action guided by integrity. The council, witnessing the success of the city's defense, began to recognize Elias' leadership fully. Advisors who had doubted his methods now followed his instructions without question. Lyra saw the transformation not only in the city's defenses, but in herself. She understood the value of humility, observation, and learning from someone whose strength came from principle rather than authority. By evening, the enemy fleet had been forced to retreat. Scythuria was intact, the citizens safe, and the palace secure. Exhausted but relieved, Lyra found herself walking through the gardens, reflecting on the events of the day. The fountains glistened under the twin moons, and the night air carried the scent of alien flora. She realized that she had learned more than she had ever anticipated about courage, leadership, and human strength. Elias joined her quietly, his presence calm and reassuring. "The threat has subsided for now," he said simply. "The city is safe, and civilians are unharmed. We can begin repairs and assessments." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes softening. "Captain Trent," she said, her voice measured but full of sincerity, "I have spent weeks trying to understand why you resisted me, and now I realize it was never about rejection. It was about teaching me, about showing me the strength of humans and the power of principle." Elias inclined his head slightly, his calm expression unchanged. "Princess, I have acted only according to what is right. Respect, duty, and integrity are the foundation of all decisions. It is not personal, it is the way humans approach responsibility. If my actions have taught you anything, then that is enough." Lyra felt a wave of understanding wash over her. She realized that her fascination, admiration, and growing respect for him were not mere infatuation. They were recognition of true strength. She had seen it in his actions, his calm under pressure, and his unwavering moral compass. It was a strength that transcended titles, status, or appearance. "Then I will learn from you," she said softly. "I will observe, understand, and apply what you have shown me." Not as a princess seeking influence, but as a leader who wants to protect her people and make wise decisions. Elias regarded her quietly, and for the first time, a small, approving nod touched his lips. "That is all anyone can ask, Princess Lyra." Leadership is not about fear or admiration. It is about making decisions guided by principle, courage, and understanding. The city settled into a calm night, the twin moons casting soft light across the palace towers. Lyra stood beside Elias, observing the city she had sworn to protect. She felt a deep respect for the human beside her, not as a suitor, but as a teacher, a model of courage, and a reminder that true strength was measured by action, principle, and the unwavering commitment to what was right. Over the following days, repairs were made, defenses were reinforced, and the city slowly returned to normalcy. Lyra applied the lessons she had learned, consulting with Elias on strategic decisions, and observing how discipline, intelligence, and moral courage could guide effective leadership. She noticed the changes within herself. She was more patient, more observant, and more aware of the impact of principle-guided decisions. Elias, for his part, continued his work with quiet dedication. He did not seek recognition, nor did he act for reward. His focus remained on what was necessary, what was right, and what would protect lives. Through his actions, he had demonstrated that human strength was subtle but profound, a force that could shape the fate of a city, influence a princess, and inspire respect across species and cultures. One evening, as the city slept under the watchful moons, Lyra finally spoke the words she had long struggled to say. "Captain Trent, I understand now. Your resistance was not rejection, it was integrity. Your courage and principle have taught me more than any counsel, any tutor, or any advisor ever could. I respect you, not because you bend to me, but because you are true to yourself and your duty." Elias looked at her, calm and measured, yet there was a trace of acknowledgement in his eyes. "Princess Lyra, respect is earned through action, not words. You have observed, learned, and applied those lessons. That is respect enough." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. She had sought understanding, and she had found it, not in authority, wealth, or status, but in the quiet, unwavering strength of a human who acted with courage, integrity, and principle. As the twin moons rose high above the palace towers, the city of Zithuria rested in safety. Two lives stood together, bound by respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to what was right. The lessons learned, the battles fought, and the courage displayed had forged a connection that transcended titles, appearances, and expectation. In the heart of the palace, a princess and a human had discovered the true measure of strength, and in doing so had changed the fate of their city forever. Zithuria had survived. Its people were safe. And Princess Lyra had learned a lesson that would shape her leadership and her understanding of humanity for the rest of her life.